This story here specifically about Svarbanu, which is what later on became Rahu and Ketu, is actually a big key to how we get disconnected from this creator, this womb, and this creator. How people go through pole shifts and they're either down here or they're up here, and where masters are is they're in the center.
The following clip is exclusive content from the university. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Savan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly along with guides and regimens. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications. Wholeness.
How this really started is that I came out of like just my sleep thinking I had figured it all out. This happens from time to time. I got it. Then I realized it was something that I already knew. And I just needed to kind of bake on it a little bit longer. And what this is that, of course, since we spoke on that, the masculine part of us is the mind, and the feminine part of us is the womb. And we've discussed this. So if you're not aware of it, everyone here has a masculine and a feminine side, just as sure as you have a positive and you have a negative. See, I may have some instability on my internet connection, so I hope that works out tonight. So you have this positive and you have this negative. We know we even have a neutral, but that's the same thing when we say masculine and feminine. So when I'm saying masculine and feminine, that doesn't mean just you as the woman or just you as the man. We're talking about something even beyond all of that. And that these forces, now, if you could think of the entire experience you're in, and this is why this will ring home tonight, because this is just what you're going through, what you're experiencing. I'm just going to put it right in front of you one more time. Now, if you notice that our entire experience is really designed to give us feedback, like we create things for feedback. And it seems like that the feedback even allows us to confirm who we are. So what I mean by this is that even if you have a job, if you're an artisan, if you're studying something, generally you're going to that's going to birth something, and then you're going to be edified by the feedback. I just want to make sure that this is clear. I call it the consolement, right? This is a word. And the consolement is like, okay, if somebody consoles someone, it's like they're nourishing them and they're making it feel all right for them. And so I was zooming into how the masculine side, which uses the mind to create things, does so in a way where it creates things to console it or to edify it. This is why people, they use their mind to create businesses, right? And that's this masculine side. It's like it's using the mind to create things that way that even become alive in the physical world. But the divine feminine side of us uses the womb to do that. And when you visualize that, what you're then seeing is an energy that expresses itself in a different way. And then it births something, and it looks at it, and it becomes just enamored by it. This is the true, unadulterated divine feminine. So it's just like looking into that baby's eyes, seeing all these baby rabbits, seeing all these trees, nature, seeing all these things that have been birthed from a womb. And that's how it's edifying itself. So if you see this now, imagine we're divine feminine, we're divine masculine in the same body. So imagine how powerful our creative forces are. Here's something that I really want you to zoom into today. It's just going to dial in the energy for this entire build. If you've never been on any kind of substance that takes your vibration into a higher rate, I'm going to explain just a one phenomena to you. You can do this through breath. Some people have enlisted some of the trees to assist them, some barks to assist them. But when you get into that space, one thing you mainly notice is the amount of energy. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like just the amount of energy that's coming through. Actually, in some journeys, like let's say, for instance, with the diamonds, the fuel is over the potential of what you need. You're almost flying by the seat of your pants, hoping to land. It's a lot of energy. So it's very interesting then that I like to see that space as a lot more real too, because you can see all the way through a person. You can see their bone structure. You can see little creatures hanging around. I mean, clearly that's more real than what's going on. So in this realer space, if you may, the energy is immense. So then why will we need to come here and act like there was a scarcity of the energy? Right? Like, this is what I'm honing in on today, is that there's this thing that we got to struggle, and, there's only a little left, and, we got to fight for power, and we got to compete. Who's the smartest? And all of this going on. And it's like, but the real one, it's unhindered energy. So the only thing then that's going on is that there's some kind of artificial separation between us and the truth. Right? And then once you're not squandering for victuals from the table and crumbs, then you're able to see the magnificence of who you are. So this build today is designed to put you into that state perpetually, to center your being into this awareness of two powerful forces. As I mentioned, that in Western occultism, the numbers that are hidden are number 4 and number 7. And they're not only used more than anything else. Even the tetragrammaton is 4. The 4 elements. It goes on and on and on, which are actually the same things. And then it goes into the 7 days of the week, the 7 candelabras, the 7 this, 7 that. But rarely do they actually tell you what these numbers actually mean, because then when you go into, let's say, something like numerology, or what we know as the original numerology, enealogy, we find that this entire system is missing from Western occultism. Why? And I started digging into this, I believe, a week before when we were talking about reincarnation, and I was showing you several instances where the acts of reincarnation and the knowledge of reincarnation was even removed from the Bible and all other texts, because the emperors and the churches felt like this would begin to distract people. They would spend too much time on themselves rather than serving the state. They would be too concerned about where they were going next. And this was going to not put them in the condition to be mastered over in this reality. So they removed a lot of this reincarnation stuff. And then we synchronized in even a bit. I mentioned it then that the nodes, which is what Rahu and Ketu are, seem to be the major controlling points of when you're entering into another life. What is that experience going to be like? And we just talked lightly about how there's generally a shift in whatever you like to do now. If you come back again, you have a tendency to not like that at all. So that way you have a higher probability of going through a different experience. And then we also mentioned that this is not hocus pocus or mumbo jumbo, though. There's an actual force, a magnetic force even, that is responsible for shifting you into the opposite frequency of what you were in before. Now, the world goes through this. Governments go through this. You may even have this going on in your house. It's a pole shift. So this just happens like Sirius A and Sirius B. They go through pole shifts all the time. This happens when your neutral or arbitration component is not as let's say it's called it's arbitration, right? So it's not able to mediate between the two poles. We talked about that the referee is the mediator. That's why he's wearing black and white. He's the, hey, I can get in between you two and solve things between your disputes. So when pole shifts are happening, it's because the mediator no longer has the ability to actually balance out those poles. And so this mediation component and arbitration component in life is really important, because we're already sitting here with the mind as a womb. Like they say, I think one of the songs says the womb and the mind is the woman. He just kind of rolled it all together. It's like the masculine mind, all is mind, Brahm, etc. And then the womb, where it's creating and generating infinitely. Yeah. So since that's going on already, and this is what I'm going to explain to you here very deeply, because what we're dealing with constantly is you got one person that generally will say, well, no, it needs to come from the heart and from the womb, not from the mind. And then you got the mind people over there saying, man, they so stupid. They don't even see the power of this, the 32 paths and the Sephiroth and the artificial kingdom. You see what I mean? So you get this them versus them. And in fact, when I look over ancient scripture, I find always consistently that around 2,000 years ago, all the ancient books get X-Men comic book like upgrade where now it's this side versus that side. And if you've read as many books as I had about this, it's very interesting to watch and read knowledge before it starts to become dualistic, where there's a good and bad and it's interpreted that way. And then after, where there's one on one side and one on the other. And then obviously there's just going to be this good and then there's this evil and then there's this binary way of looking at life. But because we're not binary beings, we're just not. You're not in a binary vessel. You have a positive, I said, negative, neutral. So this means that if you're thinking binary, which is the good one, which is the bad one, you're not really in a position to really maximize all the levels of expansion that can be participated in here in this planetary system. You won't be able to perceive things the proper way. You'll be seeing them mainly through two eyes, right? But then that one eye, that mediator won't be there. See, the mediator also, anytime this actually turns on and you really see what's going on, it's very difficult to come back into two eye and really take it that serious about what is actually going on and what is happening. Meaning that once you even just get a glimpse of the beyond, you already know what's there. So you can't really come back into this space on a consistent basis and just act like there's no beyond. It's like you just forget about it. Amnesia. You have no recollection of it. So that's why we consistently make those journeys and we make those trips. Again, that's in our meditation. It's in our breathing. And they've come up with thousands of ways for you to get on a high frequency. But it's very important to visit those spaces consistently. And also an ode to no pain, no gain. It's how this whole thing works. It's its version of our economy, except for that's why our economy is so messed up. A lot of people don't work a lot for what they receive. So that basically just unbalances everything. But the universe, it doesn't work like that. It ensures that if you put the work in, you're going to get some results. And now if we're in the artificial construct, you got people who don't put the work in and then they figure out later on, just like they erase the laws of the reincarnation. They figure out later on, damn, I'm broke. I get to the next life and now I don't have anything. How did this happen? Because you didn't actually build up anything in the life you were in previously that you can store up for a later time. They think that scripture's about Kemet when they're talking about that Joseph, or, this is the wild story. They talk about Joseph went into Kemet. Then the Pharaoh needed his knowledge. This just gets wilder and wilder. And then Joseph told him, build these silos and granaries because there's going to be these famines that start coming. And if you store up right now, while the whole land's going through famine, you're going to have food. All that is metaphysical. It's not about some person coming over and trying to tell Pharaoh what he needs to do. This is a direct reference to you as Nisut Bit, meaning the ruler of the upper kingdom and the lower kingdom. That's a bird and a snake, right? That you need to store up for a later time. And you're in this place right now where there's an abundance of things to actually store up. And then when you go into the next event, Club Afterlife, I call it, you'll be balling, as they would call it here, except for if you follow the rules that they give you here about balling. If you keep this up, they're already broke. They're already bankrupt. They're in debt. They're showing you what they are. This is another interesting thing about this system is the wool is off. 2020 is over. Everybody should be able to see clearly. But if you're still putting, the wool over your own eye, and then you're seeing this 2021 and you don't see yourself going into the expansion, well, that's what we're here to change. And if you do see that already, that's what we're here to confirm. So as I'm just dialing in on the Rahu and Ketu, right away, I'm looking at anytime I get two of something, I have a system of two. And that's what I was saying about the blueprint, because when you have the blueprint, you could just go and grab the system of two, and then all this will file into place. So notice how Rahu and Ketu in this case, this is number 4 and this is number 7, are, what is that? Draconis caput, which is the head of the dragon, and then Draconis, whatever the tail is. Okay? And right away, this starts clicking in with what I'm saying about how one aspect is the head, and we know Rahu is the head. It was Farbanu with the head cut off, which I'm going to explain the story here so that way nobody's lost on Vedic mythology, if you may. But I always see myth like a word like it doesn't exist. So Vedic wisdom, okay? So we have a being that's split into 2, and it's split right at the neck. So we have a head, and then we have a body. And to me, I can't actually give you any deeper explanation of the demarcation between where the wombs are in an androgynous body. One womb, the mouth. Boy, the mouth can get us. It said, man, the tongue is the most boisterous member of the body and can set the whole thing ablaze, right? Like the tongue is the reason that of the season these days. Like it gets you in and out of situations, right? So there's nothing like this. It cannot be ignored, this whole cave of wonders, right? And then we got the body, right? And the body in this womb that is here in this area, the Ur, right? Cooking up all the fire, all of that power and that force coming in, that obviously is clearly its own like creation station, right? I mean, it's probably how you got here. So all I'm sticking with here today is just facts, okay? Like we're not going to fly too far off, even though when we start getting it, it's going to be like, wow, but it is happening right now. It's not so disconnected where we can't connect it to what we're going through. So we got these 2 forces that we're equipped with. But this story here specifically about Svarbanu, which is what later on became Rahu and Ketu, is actually a big key to how we get disconnected from this creator, this womb, and this creator. How people go through pole shifts and they're either down here or they're up here, and where masters are is they're in the center, right? So let's go through this. I'm just going to go through the legend of Svarbanu, and I'm going to spell that for you in the chat so you can check it out on your own time. You can check out not only Wikipedia entries, you can check out Vedic entries, because I'm going to give you the compressed version of the story. And then I'm going to get deeper into the story just from a direct metaphorical level on what's really being said, because I feel it's very instrumental to consistently slay duality, right? Like I'm really here to keep things united in your consciousness so you don't short out. And it's very important to understand the story. So, because the story is the stories of cosmos, it's going to keep playing over and over again. When people really figure out what's going on, maybe they'll start looking over some of these recordings and they'll be like, yo, he already knew. So what else did he know? What else was he saying? Because this here is like, we used to, man, what was that called? The microfiche, I think it was called. It was like this big disc. They were the first CDs. They were about the size of records though, right? They thought that was going to pop. They had them in the classrooms. And what this is like a big disc of lights, if you may. And now when I understand what exactly the cosmos is, I see it just as that there is a light code playing out in the sky. And because we're under it, we're constantly not just being influenced by it, but actually acting out what is going on in that space in real time. So until you know the story or the language, which is universal, I don't think they even plan on you leaving, to be honest. Like, I wish it was up to me, but the truth is that the key to the door, that's what they talk about, these words. You know, words are keys. They got mantras, tones, vibrations that unlock stuff. And so if you don't know how to unlock yourself, though, because you may be looking at you like you're going to go up to the top of the sky, go fly up there on a balloon and then open up the glass door. Cheer up, Charlie. It's not going to happen. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going in here and actually intoning the proper vibrations to actually unlock your consciousness. Because a big part of this legend is about being free. And I'm going to keep unfolding it. So you have the link. Svarbanu is what I'm calling it today. Some of y'all that may speak Sanskrit back there like, must be South Indian. No, but listen. So a lot of us that are sitting on this path of 4 and 7 may have never asked the question, before the body was split into two, who was it anyway? And so, of course, the Vedic knowledge, man, this must have been all they had opportunity to do, because they have exhausted. Man, I don't think that any of these Star Wars, comic book, any of this stuff has anywhere near the level of the volumes of knowledge about the cosmos and how things are put together. This was their PlayStation, okay? So they had it all mapped out. And so you will always be able to keep going back and find the references. You even find out who he was, that was what's the name's child. And it'll just keep going back. But if you don't know what you're reading, and you don't know how to lose duality and decrypt the wisdom, that's how the knowledge protects itself. The wisdom protects itself because the profane dualistic mind only sees a very base explanation. They immediately looking for the good guy. Oh, I'm going to be on his side. I'm going to jump in with Vishnu, chilling with Vishnu on mine. See what I mean? Or they just jump over there with Brahm. Look, I'm with Brahm over here. And then, some root for the underdogs. Like I'm with Maya, me and Maya over here in the Nagas. You see what I mean? So it's always a whose side am I on? Because we be trying to lens this stuff through like it's the 49ers versus the Chargers or something. It's like, what are we talking about here? This is a unified construct. And what happens is once you figure out how it all connects, it unlocks this deep knowledge and wisdom. So let's go with just what happened. How did Farbanu get split into two? And I'm going to give this to you really fast. You can read the story if you want. It's all over the place. The story goes like this, the whole complete story, which is wild when you hear it. So at this point, this is now after the what I would call the rewriting of a lot of the Vedic texts. There's the Bloods now and the Crips. This is the Asuras and the Devas. So now they've actually now broke them into two. And this is very interesting because you will find several references to saying that the Asuras are actually benevolent. But in this case, since Farbanu is an Asura and he's deemed as malevolent, it starts this dualism once again that the Devas are the good ones and then the Asuras are the bad ones. And the ancient texts, they don't read out like it's more deeper than that. You would have people in holy families doing stuff that was like Rakshas and then being demoted to that. So you just couldn't like one size fit all, every tribe and every clan. And every form of life. It was a story to it. So in this case, they've now put this into blue versus red. And the story goes a little bit like this. They're looking for the creation of this elixir of mortality, the Amrita, right? And they console the higher gods. These are the Devas. They console the higher gods, higher beings, whatever you want to call them, about how they can get this elixir created so that way they can start enjoying this everlasting life on a continuous basis, dancing around with Mohini. So they get told that what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to churn the ocean waters to produce this foam that creates the sacred Amrita, right? So they go to it. And with all the powers of the Devas, which seems to not be at any limitation according to the text, they're not capable of producing it. Somehow they're lacking something, and there's just not enough within their group to produce this everlasting elixir. So they go back again. Look, we're tired. We went and tried to churn it, and it's not working. So what do? Like, consult the crystal ball. And the high knowledge comes back and says, you're going to need to get the Asuras to help you. Now, right away, I find this to be so interesting because it really breaks through a lot of the spells of who you think each of these characters are, because some of these characters seems to have like infinite power, but they can't do everlasting life with that infinite power. It right away shows you the dependency and the necessity of utilizing forces together, even if it's in a yin-yang fashion. So in this case, what later on becomes the higher and the lower, the yin and the yang, or two forces then coming into combustion, is playing out on the field as Devas and Asuras. But see, the Asuras at this point have somewhat of a reputation. They're kind of like a bit shady, according to these texts. They, get into worldly things, strippers, those kind of things, tantra out in the open, this kind of stuff. This is kind of how they label the Asuras. And so they're like, well, surely we can't give them the Amarita because they're going to basically be getting crunk forever. And that's going to kind of kill like the harp playing and the music, but we need them. So let's concoct a way for us to get them to do this with us. In short, let's lie to them. Now, at this point, from my whole perspective, if I was still dualistic and maybe Catholic in a straitjacket, I wouldn't actually assume that the beings that were supposed to be good can lie. Just like I wouldn't assume that a being that can kill the firstborn of any nation is good. Just like I can't assume that anything that will want thousands of oxen burnt at an altar is good. Just like I can't assume that anything that will just want incessant worship and people bowing down in front of it is good. But somehow in this world that goes by as just without a hitch, and people are just like into that. Just lets you know where you're at. So the Devas literally devise a plan to make the Asuras work and churn with them under the context that they would get a chance to drink the Amrita too. And that's the only reason why they agreed to it. So the field is set. They're churning the waters in the oceans of life. Okay, there's something being said back here. Because of these two getting together, the waters in the oceans of life that produces the regenerative force starts coming out. And again, the story, which reads somewhat like a dream, says that the Devas gather it up and dip. I mean, this kind of behavior, like leaving the Asuras there, like, yo, what? And they go fly off into one of their high realms. Now, this kind of sounds like the elite right away. It's like, yo, we working down here. We good. Where's the stimulus? What the heck? We were supposed to get you in to invest back in us. What's happening? This is what the story is kind of playing out just as it is. I'm just saying it as it is. So they ride off into the higher heavens, and they're one of the gods and chains himself into the beautiful Mohini. They dancing and stuff. They pouring out Marita. It's about to get lit. And the Asuras are down there clearly with no wings. They're not able to get up there. They've been cheated. And all this is going off without a hitch, except there is one much more smarter Asura who peeped it coming a long way away, who knew that the behavior of the Devas from time to time happened to be shady, and that this could be another one of their coups, and disguised itself or himself as a Deva. And when they rode off, he rode off too. That's Farbanu. And as they was in there with the Amrita, they done popped the bottles and everything. Mohini is dancing this around, passes it to Svarbanu, who is an Asura. And he basically takes a drink. And he's right in the middle of taking the drink before, I believe it's Vishnu. It could be any character at this point. Takes a whip, a chakra actually, and whips it. And because Ketchum's like, yo, that's Farbanu. That's one of the Asuras. Wham! And in this process, beheads Svarbanu. But because the elixir had already run through the mouth and into the body, the being had already became immortal. And that is the beginning of the story of Rahu and Ketu, which are also known as the nodes in occultism. These are what's also referred to as the nodes of the moon, because everything is under the moon. I don't care what planet you come from or what energy you're giving off. From the full moon to the new moon, that energy is going to change like a wave. So this energy affects everything. And that's why in occultism, in Western occultism specifically, they only work with the 4 and the 7. In the deeper sanctums, because they're not interested in learning Saturnalianism, Venusianism or Luciferianism, Mercurianism or Hermetics, solar. They're not interested in learning any of that. They're interested in how to control that. And when you understand polarities, that's how you control, that's how you arbitrate powerful forces. So that's what this energy is actually bringing forth, and this energy is about. And it's encrypted in the story of a terrestrial force, a daemon, if you may, given the immortality or the everlasting power of a god. And they roll it in a story like that because you're dealing with very powerful forces that are still in many tenses what you would consider as terrestrial. This is about the conscious plane, things popping off here on the planet that we're on right now. Your mind and your womb being the reason why everything is existing around you.